in Independence Day. Whole lot of fire.
The whole atmosphere was on fire.
Whole atmosphere was on fire. Yeah. Welcome to another. Whoa. Let's try this again. Welcome to another edition of the Spoiler Room. Here we are. It is June 28th. 2016, and yes, we are talking about the big popcorn film that came out this past weekend that, nowadays they say, oh, it only made $41 million domestically over the weekend. It's a flop. And I'm like, wow. Back in my day, $40 million for an opening weekend? Are you kidding me? Yes, we're talking about Independence Day Resurgence, and tonight I'm joined by a couple of crew members here who are going to help talk about this film. We're going to dig into it a bit and just spoil the hell out of it, because that's what we do here in the Spoiler Room. Tonight, first off, we have the man himself, Mr. Cole Meredith. Hello, Cole.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me, man.
Well, we're glad to have you on here. It's glad you could join us tonight. And he has returned from going walkabout in Alaska. It is the man, the bow tie man himself. Mr. Paul Salazar comes back to the Spoiler Room. Hello, Paul.
It's so great to be back. Oh, it's so great to be back.
Well, we are happy to have you back. If anything, for that just adorable avatar your Google, your YouTube guy has, a little ferret with a bow tie. I mean, he's just so cute. But we are not here to talk about ferrets with bow ties. No, we are here to talk about Independence Day Resurgence. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this is the sequel 20 years in the making, literally. We have followed up with Earth now, 20 years after the events in the 1996 war, and Earth has incorporated the alien technology into their civilization. They've recouped, rebuilt, and they're like, oh, hey, we're ready to take on anything. Well, that is before the 3,000-mile wide spaceship shows up. Yes, the aliens have returned with an even bigger ship and a nastier disposition, and we see how the old and the new come together to try to fight this menace. Does that sound about right, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, first off, I'm going to start off first. I usually don't, but I want to start off first. And if you didn't catch my review, I loved every minute of this cheesy, campy sci-fi film. And I know there's many people out there that didn't, and I could see why, because this is old, dumb popcorn film entertainment, folks. This is the older school type feel to it. Heck, not even old school like 90s. I'm talking old school like the old 50s and 60s sci-fi type of film. And I was grinning from ear to ear. I completely dug it. Paul, how about you? How'd you feel, your initial feelings with this film?
I really did like the film.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't apparently like it as much as you sound like you like it. There were just a few things that knocked me back, but I definitely, this scores high enough for me to go watch multiple times, but it doesn't score high enough for me to get on Blu-ray yet. So
oh, okay. Wow.
That's kind of a weird rating system, but yes.
No, that works out well. And Cole, I kind of know your feelings, but go ahead. How did you feel about Independence Day Resurgence? Initial feelings.
Well, back when this was the original was released, what was the year, Mark? What year was that?
1996.
Yeah. Oh man, I mean, I had just discovered both Pulp Fiction and The Crow in the theater. At the age of, what, 14, 15, I guess something around.
Yeah, it would have been. Mm-hmm.
And, that changed my life. I mean, people talk about the whole Miramax thing now like it's some sort of snarky joke. But back then it certainly wasn't. I mean, you saw something like Pulp Fiction or you walked out of something like The Crow and you felt like, holy shit, they're finally making movies for us. So we just started going to everything. And when Independence Day rolled around, I was the one person on the sidelines who was like, have you guys seen The Arrival? That was my movie. I literally, I would sit people down because people are just, first, my wealthier friends were just starting to get the really big TVs. You know, and they were watching Independence Day, and I would say, no, The Arrival is better. And sit and watch it and be like, you're fucking crazy. So, short story long, you know, I didn't go into this thinking, you know, this is going to be some classic. In fact, being the Will Smith fan that I am, you know, I saw I Am Legend 4 times in the theater. I'm a Will Smith fan. But I didn't like his character in the first film. In fact, his character is one of the reasons I find that first film kind of unwatchable. Like, if you were to take the English out of the movie, his character would be more annoying than the aliens. Hearing his character wasn't in it was like, awesome, let's go see it. My second IMAX experience ever. I believe my first was Terminator Genesis, which we also reviewed. This was an amazing experience. I mean, come on. Seeing a sinister alien ship land across the entire Atlantic Ocean in IMAX, I mean, granted, we're talking $31.75 for 2 tickets, but well worth it. Well worth it. Jeff Goldblum provided all the laughs I'd expected he would. Who is the lead there? Hemsworth?
Yeah.
I can't blame him for any shortcomings of the character. That character was probably written as it was, and they were going to cast the best-looking, hottest young person they could. And I can't, you know, blame anybody for that character or how it came out, but it's for sure not very engaging. Nor is the relationship between the is it a Death Squad member and the businessman who team up and they know how to kill the aliens. I mean,
oh yeah,
that stuff could have been cut. All that stuff could have been cut. You know, take 15 minutes out of the movie and focus more on the stuff that rocks, like a bus getting chased by a giant alien, you know, stuff like that. Overall, though, man, honestly, 5 stars. This gets my highest rating. As a theatrical experience, come on. I mean, what more do you want in IMAX? I don't know.
Well, you know, and here's the thing is, and I'm coming back to it just because it stuck out with me. Is there a number of people out there have mentioned how boring this film was, and I'm like,
what?
Exactly. You know, I'm sitting here going, are you kidding? Or someone said it was slow. I'm like, are you kidding? I watched the film, and actually I just came back literally today from the second screening. I took Honorable Son number 1 and number 2 to it, who, by the way, really loved it. Actually, they said they enjoyed this one more than the first one.
Wow.
And watching this one even a second time around, the film moves, it clips along nicely through this story, almost faster than you may want to at points. But I was just trying to figure out where the boring parts were, you know, and I couldn't quite figure it out. But I'm like, to each his own, you know. But for me, I loved the carryover of the storyline, and I also like the fact that they said it actually 20 years later. You know, they could have easily tried to make it pick up right after the first one, but they don't. And you don't get a whole lot of explanation either. And maybe this is where some of this comes in because, like I say, it's old school because, am I wrong? This film doesn't really hold your hand as far as explaining a lot of things. It's just like, this is how it is. Would you say, Paul?
Yeah, I agree, but you have to think it in terms of a scientist. It's going to take years for even that distress signal to get to anyone that could listen to it, you know? Mm-hmm. And they said, yes, it went out really, really fast in like a short burst type of message, but it's still, unless it like went through like Carl Sagan's contact wormhole thing, that's the only way, you know, it couldn't have accelerated any quicker. So 20 years, perfect setting time for me.
Yeah, well, and it also helped. I'm glad they did that because they could bring back as much of the original cast as they could get, and everybody would look 20 years older, and it would make sense.
Yes.
They wouldn't have to try to go and CG someone and make them look, you know, younger or anything.
But they can do that now.
which we've seen with Civil War, how they can make less than zero Robert Downey Jr. again. So, Cole,
it had to be said.
It had to be said. I had to. That's what I picture in my mind every time I see that scene. It's like, holy crap.
We could have the Right Stuff Jeff Goldblum saying, it's called Sputnik.
Or bring back young Jeff Goldblum in that whole cowboy outfit from Buckaroo Banzai. But I digress.
Yes!
But I digress.
I want to see that movie. Director's cut. Come on.
There we go.
Petition starting now.
In in ID Resurgence, we just insert Jeff Goldblum from Buckaroo Banzai in every one of his scenes, and there you go. But back to this film. Cole, what did you think about them setting it 20 years in the future? Did you like that? Did you like the fact that they didn't explain every single thing of why things they were? They're just like, oh yeah, we merged technology, and boom, let's move on.
That's what I liked about. I liked the fact that we were set up for a science fiction movie very logically. I mean, we would have used their technology to advance, and I think that was great. Like you say, I think I appreciated it on a different level, which is it made sense, and it wasn't more of the same in the sense that we open on, Anywhere USA, which would have been an easy way to do it, and actually the more obvious way to do it. I mean, I would imagine it took several meetings to get the script to that place. That's my hunch. I would imagine that somebody somewhere, I don't know who, pardon my French, but I don't know who, somebody somewhere fought for that. You know what I mean? Look, we're going to open, and it's going to be not modern times. We're already going to be in a science fiction universe. Deal with it. Probably hoping there would be a third movie where the whole thing is in space, almost like a Star Trek, which we'll probably never see, but I would have loved to have seen that film. Well, but yeah, that's my take on that. I thought that was a brave choice, and I was sucked in right away by that. Like, yeah, okay, we're not going to pretend like the first film didn't happen. We're just going to move forward logically, and if you can't keep up, well, I guess keep eating popcorn until something blows up.
I mean, it was refreshing for me to see this, and I've been hard on comic book films, and we've had long discussions, and but it was fun to see a genre film not based off of a comic book, in all honesty, and not take itself seriously. This film, if you go in thinking, now the first one took itself a little more seriously. It was a little more serious in tone. You had a few more, serious type moments. You had the comedic moments too. You had Will Smith in there, but this one just embraced the old cheese 50s sci-fi feel, I think, and they just ran with it. And I don't think anyone should go in this film thinking they're getting a serious film. They're making a fun film. And yes, you can have both sometimes, but I think they were just making a fun film and not trying to get too serious, because we have had a lot of genre films that have been, I think, taking themselves too seriously, a.k.a. Warcraft. That's a film I felt took itself too seriously. But this one, really, I mean, and especially, I think I likened it the most to a cross between, say, the original and Starship Troopers.
Wow, yeah.
If you think about it, Cole, would you say this kind of has that Starship Troopers energy to it and vibe to it? I mean, you got the military civilization going on and everything. Did you get that type of feel at all, or can you see that? Or am I just, full of shit?
No, not at all. I mean, Starship Troopers to me has that, and again, here I am going to sound like a complete uneducated fool, but Paul Verhoeven, am I pronouncing his name right?
Mm-hmm.
Verhoeven, that film to me speaks of his style, very much. I mean, he's got this weird, everything he does is a little perverted. Even RoboCop, I mean, it's like
Oh yeah.
that film makes you feel like right on the edge of pornography, which is good. I'm not saying I mean that as a compliment, obviously. Uh, so I don't put it in that space, but I do agree that it um, has that sort of sci-fi drive to where the story is already propelling itself forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, to reference another Will Smith movie, I, Robot, which is probably the weakest film from my favorite director. Uh, they set everything up very carefully. This film, it's like, shit, you're on your own, especially if you haven't seen the first film,
Yeah.
which I'm sure a lot of people haven't. Certainly the majority of kids I saw at the theater that we watched it, which was fairly full. I'm surprised this movie is considered a bomb. That surprises me because I saw I, Frankenstein opening night. This theater was not that. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, I'm overstaying my welcome, but you know what I'm
No,
saying.
I get what you're saying, Paul. What about you? Would you feel like this? I'm not saying that it's as dark or twisted or whatever, but it had that energy or spirit that you saw in Starship Troopers, didn't it? To where you're just all in into this world.
I had not thought about that until you brought it up in this
Hmm.
podcast, and I
Oh.
would agree with you, yes. And that is probably one of the reasons why this movie didn't appeal to me as much as it
Hmm.
probably should have. It's because, to me, the first movie was more, a little bit more hopeful. It felt like, humanity is triumphing? Ugh.
Triumphant?
Triumphant, yes. But in this movie, it just seemed like it stumbled a few times trying to get there, and I felt like, wow, we suck as a race. Go aliens! Yes, come on! But and it just, and so yes, it's that darker. It felt a little darker to me,
Hmm.
and I really would have loved to see more of a Will Smith type of thing. Jeff Goldblum is great and all that, but his character to me just didn't have that like, welcome to Earth, pow, type of energy. And yeah, it had a different energy, and that's probably why this film didn't didn't do as well. But it's still a great movie. It just
It
didn't do as well to me as the first movie did for me.
it did. I mean, it is still I consider a good popcorn film.
It is. It
I
definitely is.
and I'm not really, I don't know. I had and I guess maybe it's me because I didn't have any expectation whatsoever. I'm like, it's 20 years later and they're making a sequel to this film.
Uh,
I'm just gonna go in, and if I feel like I got my money's worth, I'll be happy. And I did. I was grinning from ear to ear when I immediately picked up that we are in a different type of film here than the first one. This film is just going really back to that cheesy, campy type of sci-fi feel to it, and I loved it. I
mhm,
loved it because it was refreshing and it was a little different than a lot of the direction. It seems like studios feel they need to take some of the genre films.
mhm,
I mean, this thing just let loose and it just went. you know, and and we get it was great seeing some of the the old characters bringing back them. Brent Spiner's character. I kind of like how they. And they kind of explain things away, and maybe they don't explain things in detail that maybe people are used to. But for me, that was good enough reason. Oh yeah, he was in a coma. He didn't actually die. He's been in a coma for 20 years. Boom, he's awake because the spaceship was coming.
exactly.
And I love that. Boom, that's all you need. Move on. We've incorporated technology from aliens into our civilization. Boom, move on. We don't need to know why or how. It just that's the way the world is. That's the way it is now. And it makes sense that they would do that. you know?
And their technology worked that way too. It's like, things didn't power up until until
Hmm.
like a queen arrived, and so it's like, oh yeah, the queen's arriving. He starts to, like, power up as a person. He's powering up, sort of, so to
Hmm.
speak. So
I,
I thought it was a great tie-in.
I'll tell you one of the storylines I really liked, and I know Cole mentioned that the character probably could have been cut out, but me personally, I enjoyed the Warlord uh, little story there where we find out what was going on in Central Africa
Mm.
with the spaceship having landed and the fact that they actually fought the aliens for 10 years. What'd you think of that, Paul? Where we come to find out that, yeah, just because they did what they did at the beginning of the movie didn't mean that there wasn't, you know,
It's a ground thing, yeah.
that the battle ended there. What'd you think of the South Africa bit and the exploration there of how they handled 10 years of war with the aliens?
I thought it was great. It had it added another layer to this whole psychic link thing. It re-emphasized that part of the aliens, and also too, it is actually very refreshing to watch a sci-fi movie that isn't like, oh, the filming nation is the one that is always dealing with the problems, you know. So in this particular case, you know, the Americans weren't the ones that totally, you know, did it. It's a worldwide thing, and that's what the theme of this movie was. It was the entire world was affected by the attack, and they actually came together. And as a world, we're supposed to fight off, you know, the next attack. And I thought that was a really nice thing, because if they would have said, "Oh yeah, a bunch of guys from New Jersey suddenly, you know, attacked a ship for 10 years," I'd be like, "Ugh."
Yeah, I love it made sense, in all honesty, especially how those characters, well, you know, how we get that history, and it made sense of how they would have approached that threat. And, you know, the fact they do have the alien weapons, they know how to kill these guys, and they figured out a good chunk of their language because they fought them for 10 years. You know?
Exactly.
And I enjoyed that exploration and getting that extra bits of, okay, the battle didn't just end with the big epic Will Smith walking off with, you know, Jeff Goldblum. There was a lot of residual fights going on. You
Well,
know.
how would you guys feel about putting those two characters on the bus then? I mean, give them something to do. I mean, involve them in the story. I mean, they're kind of out there on their own. I mean, I like
Yeah.
the guys. Why aren't they on the bus? We've got a school bus.
Well, they gave him they do rescue the scientist, though, Brent Spiner's scientist. And
Oh, that's true. That's true. I'm sorry. I've only seen the film once, so.
no, it's okay. I mean, I just am coming from it, but they do give them a purpose. They're at the base. In fact, the Warlord guy is the one who figures out that they're in trouble because the aliens that we find out, there's prisoner aliens, which I thought was really cool. I'm like, yes, that's exactly
Yeah.
what humans would do. Is if they found alive ones, they wouldn't kill them all. They'd leave them for study. You know,
Of course.
Intern camps.
intern camps. Yeah, you know. So I love that little bit, and so they do give them something to do.
I dig it. I dig it. I stand
Yeah.
corrected, man.
You know, so I did like that they gave them purpose there, but yeah, you know, overall, the film is really one of those where you just got to sit back and just enjoy it and don't think too deeply about anything. So thinking about thinking too deeply or not too deeply, we'll start with Paul here. Paul, is there something that comes to mind in the film that we haven't touched on yet that maybe you want to talk about as far as in regards to you know, IDR, as far as their approach or anything at all?
Probably it just in about like a sequel in general, because this did seem to follow the idea of what a sequel has to be. Like, the sequel has to be bigger than the first. It had to honor the first, and you know, and introduce certain lines and certain music cues and certain characters and things like that that make a sequel, to me, a sequel. And I would like what your guys' opinions are, and what makes this movie a decent sequel to the first movie, basically.
Cole, go ahead. What would you say makes this a decent sequel to ID4?
Well, to me, right off the bat, it's slightly better film in the sense that it has a bit more nuance. It's made, it's created and directed and conceived, and every element, I would assume, aside from maybe the computer generated effects, all of the stuff is being done by people who did the first and are much older and wiser. And I feel that. I feel that in the final product. There's a lot more sense of fun. There's a lot less patriotism, despite. I mean, nothing. I mean, believe me, I'm a patriot. I've grown up in America, and I make American movies, and I'm just fine with that. But you know, you got to admit the Bill Pullman speech in the first movie, you know, is what draws a lot of criticism towards it. This movie, it just had more of a genuine vibe to it. Everybody seemed to click more. There was more of a sense of professionalism. The special effects were not only more developed but better utilized, I thought. I mean, I think having a ship land across an entire ocean is a fantastic idea, because how many monuments can you destroy? And even having one of your lead characters say they like to destroy the big monuments, I think is key to where the film was at. It's doing everything it can to separate itself, and in the end, if they had done a third one, it wouldn't have taken place on Earth. You know, I guess to directly answer Paul's question, you know, it's made by the same people who made the first one, only they're older and wiser. It's a more mature film, and it utilizes the best parts of the first to its advantage without exploiting them. I think they downplay the weakest parts of the first. And, I mean, come on, that end fight with the school bus and the giant alien in the desert, that is fantastic. That's fantastic stuff. If I was 12 years old with 3D glasses on, there's nothing like that in the first film, you know, to me, you know, as a film goer.
Yeah, and I would say that it is. They did with this sequel what I really enjoyed about. In all honesty, I'm going to invoke the name of Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
They invoked some of the fun elements that really stood out for people, and they embraced that and pretty much made the entire film like that, and I had no problem with that. You know, and I mentioned the term a couple of times, and I guess I'm trying to maybe not make it common or not, but it makes a lot of sense, and my son, Honorable Son Number 1, came up with it after we were watching, I think, Transformers or something. I forgot what it was, but he says, Dad, I think you're thinking of that film through rose-colored nostalgia, as a play off on rose-colored glasses. And it's true. If we go back to ID4, at its core, if you look at that film, we get the same elements there that we still get here in Resurgence. You still get the overacting. You still get the you know, the cheese factor that you had in the first one. You know, now the first one had a more serious tone to it, but there's still, I mean, Bill Pullman's speech, let's face it, as great of a scene it is, and it just, at the same time you're going, that's the cheesiest speech I've heard, but I love it. It instills, you know, it instills emotion in you, and that's what I got out of this one. Is as cheese factor as some of the scenes were, as some overacting as some of the scenes were, it got an emotion out of me. It got me smiling. It was like, you know, I thought personally it was a nice touch of having when we get that scene where you get the crew inside the alien ship. And we had that bit of storyline in there. I liked that. This film, it is a sequel. I mean, it is tried true, beat for beat a sequel. You really should see the first one to catch everything in this one. Otherwise, you will probably get lost. But, you know, that's where it's kind of that old school sequel thing. But you can still have fun with it. And they definitely had fun with it. Whereas the first one, they were making maybe a little bit more of a serious type of popcorn film. This one, they just threw spaghetti at the wall, you know. And that's what I loved about it. I loved the spirit of it, the fact that it did feel a bit like Starship Troopers. And I didn't see anything before I saw the film, but after the film I went online, and they even did about 3 or 4 cheesy promos that felt like they were pulled right out of Starship Troopers, the
Really?
propaganda videos. They did one about
Oh man.
visiting Las Vegas from the ruins and how you could actually stay at tents in Las Vegas and play from real, actual slot machines that were excavated from the ruins of Vegas after the War of '96.
Nice, nice.
There's another video in there with Jeff Goldblum in character talking about the defense system, that satellite system that the aliens immediately just wiped out. They have a whole little promo video about how they have that set up to help protect Earth. There's like 2 or 3 other videos like that, and I'm coming back and watching those. I'm going, come on, they are totally going for that Starship Trooper type vibe with this film, and that was, I guess, because I love that film so much. I really got into Resurgence. And second time viewing, first in my review I said they didn't do a lot of character development. I actually would like to go back and revise it, that there is actually some character development in here. It's just that it breezes through it fairly quickly to where you may not notice that they're doing it because there's so much going on in this film. But there is some character development in here. There really is. Not deep, not a lot, but there's some, And yeah, I think it's a decent sequel. I think it's the direction they needed to take, considering it's based off of a film that's 20 years old. And again, I think we look at that original and rose-colored nostalgia and the fact of it is good, but if you want to get some criticism on that film, it's still got the cheese, it's still got the overacting, it still has a number of those things that many people are finding in this one. And it's not all action either. There's a lot of slow spots in the original. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So you make it a good point, Paul. That I think it's a decent sequel. Did you feel that it was a decent sequel, a respectable sequel?
I did because of the things that I mentioned. It expands on it. On the original ideas, it reintroduces us to some of the characters, and basically expands on the actual story. There were a few elements, and I think listening to what you and Cole are talking about, I think I probably wanted to see more of that nostalgic cheesiness. I think I probably would have been much, much happier had they gone even further with that. People would probably like, what? This movie really doesn't make any sense anymore. If they would have done that, I think I would have been much, much happier, because there are some scenes in this film that it just made me, ugh. It felt like, they're passing the torch, which is what you do in sequels, right? Well, it seemed like, oh, okay, president's dead,
Which I did like the president in this one, and I don't know if anyone caught it. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Paul.
No.
But it just, if anyone caught it, this president is far different than our President Whitmore. I mean, President Whitmore, he debated long and hard before he nuked him. And here we get the storyline, because, folks, we have a storyline in here of the first spaceship that shows up, and what do?
Shoot it.
We shoot it down, and it turns out that it was meant to be an ark to help save the human race.
Yeah, it was delivering knowledge.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Especially if your advisor tells you don't. No, let's not listen to him. Let's listen to all the other warmongers here and shoot it down.
Especially if your advisor is Jeff Goldblum.
Yes!
Jeff Goldblum's telling you, no, I don't think that's a good idea, But I love that. The thing is, though, it kind of made sense with the way their society had become. I mean, let's face it, the planet nearly got obliterated 20 years ago by an alien invasion, and here another alien shows up, you're just like, yeah, no. Preemptive strike, which for a fact the writers are making a statement in there about the military with that one. I was like, wow, way to hit us in the face with that message, guys. Hey, look, this thing shows up. We don't understand it. Let's shoot it down.
Well, in the last of that species, it's fought against the aliens, and it's like, we just wiped them out, basically. Oops.
I
But we
kind of like.
didn't. Yeah.
I like that though because the way they explained it, they did play that scene off well. Because when they wake up the ball, and she's like, "Well, yeah, I came to save you guys, but then you shot me down." And there's no emotion from really the alien at all, but all the humans are just like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
They're kind of looking at the ground, kicking the dirt, like, yeah.
Because that's what we do.
Because that's exactly what we do. Yeah, So yeah, I enjoyed the fact that there was another alien in there. We got some backstory there, and really, I hope this film does make enough to do a sequel because I would love to see a completely alien type, humans mixed in with alien races and fighting side by side against this species of alien, which we've never really got a name for them. Ever have we? They don't even name them here.
Bouncy balls.
The bouncy balls. Well, no, not the bouncy balls, but
Oh, no,
the
the
tentacle aliens.
Oh, yes, the tentacle aliens. Yes.
They're the aliens.
For all we knew, they were the only ones out there. Now there are more.
Now there's more, and there's a whole
part of the resistance now too.
I just love that, and how humans and like really did this. If you think about the elements a little more, does this not feel like kind of that old 50s sci-fi humans against the entire universe type of thing?
Yes, and the rest of the universe is afraid of us because we're so good at war.
This is like Earth versus the flying saucers type of feel. It really did, and I'm sure they had some influences from that in here. Because watching it a second time, I'm like, holy crap, this is like Earth versus the flying saucers in a lot of ways. That 50s sci-fi feel of the humans figure it out and take it to the aliens.
Yeah.
And so decent sequel. I think all around we feel that Ethan could have embraced some more elements, but overall, yeah, good question there, Paul. What about you, Cole? Do you have a topic or a question or something that we haven't touched on yet about the film that you maybe want to explore?
Sure. I mean, I'd be willing to ask. I've only been on the internet about 3 years, so I can't really say. But it seems like all of a sudden, since the sequel came out, the original is sacrosanct to so many people. Whereas beforehand, you never saw, Independence Day profile pictures. You never saw or read about people saying, it's one of the greatest science fiction films of all time. In fact, I'd wonder how much of the original success is based on a Super Bowl ad where the White House blew up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, legitimately, I'm not saying this as some angry indie filmmaker railing against big budget movies. I loved Resurgence. I would say Resurgence is twice the movie the original was. I wish I had $32.50 or whatever I spent on it again to go back right now. But I'm just curious, the rose-colored glasses thing, Mark, one of your honorable young sons had mentioned. Yeah. I'm curious, what do you guys really think of that? Do you think the original... I had my lady friend look it up before we went. She's like, the sequel isn't getting good reviews. And I was like, bullshit. The original got horrible reviews. Look it up. She went and looked it up, and to my dismay, I was wrong. The original got a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, even though I remember at the time, everybody was lampooning it. What do you guys think the original was some unfound classic? I mean, and I guess I asked that to our listeners out there, too, because I never viewed it as that. I viewed it as... just another summer blockbuster that hit at the right place and time, especially considering the director's work that, came after it. Not that it was bad, but in terms of recapturing that moment, it seemed like a good marketing ploy. And I would say Resurgence is a much better film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So... yeah, Paul, what would you say? Would you say the original really is that really classic that everybody suddenly is starting to talk about since the sequel didn't hit the right vibe for them, or was it just kind of just a regular sci-fi popcorn film that we are looking at a bit differently after the fact, after it was released?
I think people do look at films back in their childhood much differently than they did when they first watched it. I know I look back at Independence Day, and I do think about it as much different. I only remember the good parts. But now that Cole mentioned it, I'm thinking back. It's like it's true. The only time I've ever heard of Independence Day mentioned was in Austin Powers when Dr. No used the picture of the White House explosion. That was the only time I've ever seen it like redone, respoofed, or anything. So it's like it didn't really become part of our culture. Maybe the speech. I think the speech gets talked about a lot. Whitmore's speech,
Yeah.
and I think that was like maybe that's the thing that everybody's like, ooh, this is how speech writing should be, and that honestly, and I watched this film, and it's just I think it really is. People remember, and it's remember when all these great singers and actors they pass away, and people were like, oh, I remember all these things, and and you hear all their music, and you hear all the YouTube just blows up with like Robin Williams sketches and all these things, and then a year down the line, everyone forgets about it again. And I think that's what's happening to the original film, is that people, because they hear about the sequel, especially 20 years ago, they're like, it's all coming back, and then eventually it'll probably die down again, maybe when the next Mad Max comes out or something like that.
Yeah, and I agree, and I've been guilty of it. I mean, we all do, because we grew up, especially us being film fans, we grew up with films. And depending on which film you watched at which time in your life as a developing child, some of those films become, really fantastic because there was a lot of emotions. And we've touched on this before in other episodes, where there's a lot of emotions that went along with that film. The film itself may not have been great, but I took my first girlfriend to see this film. Well, suddenly you might have a different view on that film than the rest of the world because you were in, a happy place, or first boyfriend, or the first kiss during this film, stuff like that, I guess, is my point. And yeah, the original with this film, it is a decent popcorn film, but it is got this feeling like people are like, oh, well, it just was so much better than the sequel, and I'm like, if you really look at it objectively, but it's tough to do because those films struck a chord with you depending on what time of life you were at. And for me, I mean, '96, I was in college, when it came out, because the original did come out in '96. I believe that was the year it came out. And yeah, for me, it was like I was already in college, and I thought it was a really fun movie. It is a good movie, entertaining, but at the same time, you're like, now looking back at it, I watch it, I go, yeah, this is still good, but man, that speech, which I just thought Bill Pullman, loved, I loved, man, that thing is really cheesy and over the top. Very dramatic, over dramatic, and I didn't quite think that before because it instilled the emotions, and it still puts the emotions in me, but looking at it, if you look at it just objectively, yeah, that film, it's a decent popcorn film, which is what it was supposed to be, and I think a lot of people do recognize, think of Will Smith because he has such a powerful personality. He is, he takes over pretty much every scene he's in that film, and
he certainly does, dude.
He's very charismatic, and don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
I really enjoy Will Smith. I enjoy him.
Absolutely.
I enjoy him more in his more serious roles and stuff like this, but he does have a very strong personality. And in that first one, his personality is literally another character. Besides him, just his just his presence is almost like another character in that movie. If you remove kind of the Will Smith element, you're like, oh, and I think maybe that could be why Resurgence isn't being, because they don't have the Will Smith factor in there.
It's to me. That's what happened to me.
I think that's where it's a little underwhelming for some folks, is that okay, you don't have the Will Smith personality in there to maybe cover up some of the weaknesses of the film, and so some of those weaknesses come out more because you don't have such that strong performance that you had in Will Smith. And I don't mean strong as in well acted, though he does do well in the role. I mean just strong as his personality of his character in that film is pretty dominant.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe that's what people may be missing.
So I read someplace that the reason why they couldn't bring him back on the film was because he was asking for $50 million for the two movies. And do you think that they probably could have easily made the money if they put him on there, or do you think no, let's just go down the direction that they're going now and see what they can do, or do you think that the movie is seriously hurt without him in it?
I don't think it seriously hurt. I think it hurt it. I don't think it seriously did. I mean, I didn't really miss his character in this movie the way the other, it's just that his character does stand out, and you would have liked to see him in here.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things. I think for general public, yeah, for draw, it probably did hurt them. But having his character in there, I think would take away from trying to introduce other characters.
That's so true.
And that's what I think, the approach was too, is they're trying to introduce new characters, and people kept inserting Will Smith. You know what I mean? I mean, even
Yeah.
I caught myself trying to do it, going, wow, boy, it'd be great if Hillard was here,
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is, but had you had him in there, it wouldn't have really mattered at all who the rest of the cast was.
But the natural Hillard proxy wasn't that he didn't portray him off. It's like they tried to make him different because of that, and
they tried to make him not Hillard. They tried to make him a more serious type of,
character,
in honor of his dad,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So where he would take things more seriously because he's the offspring of the hero that saved, that helped save the world. So they were trying to play that angle, and I, like I said, I fully admit this film isn't perfect, but I had a blast, and I guess my expectations were none when I went into it, and maybe some people had higher expectations, but for me, I'm like, any film that's a sequel for a film that's literally real time 20 years old, you really shouldn't put a lot of expectation on anything with it, and we do it. It's natural. I mean, I did that with the Terminator ones, but yeah, because of Terminator. But in the same respect, it's a different time now. It's a different way of filmmaking now, just in general, and we've experienced so much more from when we were back then. Let's face it, ID4 had a scope that was impressive as well, that stood out for us. But here we are 20 years later with all the superhero films and all the other type of films we've had. That type of scope, you're just like, oh yeah. I mean, is it me? Is it that too, to where these films were kind of the breakthrough? So, I mean, do they really, should they really attempt these sequels now that the world has changed so much and filmmaking in general has changed so much? Is it really worth it, or do we really need them, Paul?
If there's a story out there that needs to be told, definitely yes. Make a sequel, or do a Ridley Scott and make a sequel. Don't call it a sequel, and pretend that the originals never existed. You could do that too. It's so long as that there's a story there, and there are people that are willing to fork out $30 for it. Do it. I mean, because that's the point. That the point is to tell somebody and entertain them with a story. Who cares, if the story isn't liked by everybody,
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, that's with this. There was a story there to be told, I mean,
Yeah.
anyone who follows sci-fi will pick up the fact that, oh, you just took out a good chunk of this alien race. Yeah, there's gonna be consequences, and I thought they came up with a plausible story for it, and again, I was entertained. My boys loved it. Which to me, I guess, also is a big factor. I was so happy that they enjoyed it because I was kind of worried, and they're like, "No, we actually enjoyed this more than the first one." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, cool." Then and for me, with a PG-13 film, there you go, filmmakers, mission accomplished. Your 13-year-old and 15-year-old loved it, and that's another thing too is these films aren't necessarily geared towards us old folks anymore.
Oh, come on.
I mean, there's the nostalgia factor with getting the original cast back for this film, but on the whole, yeah, I think as long as people are entertained, that should be the most important part with a film like this, because let's face it, folks, we are not making Oscar material at all. With this, and I hope it does make enough for them to come out with a sequel with the humans leading a full alien force against these tentacle aliens, because I want to see that now. Cole, what about you? Didn't you get just a little tinge of, man, I want to see that next film now when they said, oh, we want the humans to lead the resistance?
Oh, man, I'm so down with it. For me, this is twice the movie the first movie was. And I mean that. I was into this. I was so into this film. I think it's great. I made some complaints about the Death Squad guy and the corrupted businessman, but I was just trying to make conversation. Really, this is a fantastic modern sci-fi adventure. And I guess the only thing I would have to say about it is maybe the younger people enjoy it less than we do. You guys were saying maybe this is made for the younger crew and we're left behind. I would go in the opposite direction. I would say if they were worried about the younger people, they would have cast Will Smith. Because, I mean, that's where all of that power comes from, man. I mean, still.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know if I ever answered that question, but I don't know why he wasn't included in this.
Sure.
He would have been if the question is money, he would have been worth the money. Even though I don't like his character in the first movie, I thought his character was so annoying and just distracted me from the cooler characters. But in any case, I think this is a fantastic sequel, man.
Yeah.
I can't imagine missing this on the big screen. I can't imagine not taking the opportunity to go to the theater with your friends and family and get some 3D glasses and watch a ship land across the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, why not?
Yeah, don't think about physics or anything. Come on, these films like this aren't meant to think like that. I mean, we break everything now. Oh, could Star Trek technology? Who cares? It looks cool. A big frickin' spaceship across the Atlantic Ocean. Come on. I mean, they did it, and it looked cool. There you go. That was the whole point of it. It wasn't, physically or however, was it actually plausible? Really? We've got movies now where, guys have, we've got gods and beings with mutant powers in that, and you're going to question a spaceship that's 3,000 miles wide? Come on. With genre films, suspension of disbelief is I think is not as needed as just fun. And I wish that I really want to see a film with the human race leading a full alien armada against the bad guys. How about you, Paul? When they said, "Oh, we want the humans to lead our resistance," did that just spark some ideas of, man, I want to see a full alien spaceship armada led by humans attacking aliens?
Of course, of course.
You know,
but then Disney will buy it. And...
But
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that.
And Disney will buy it. Yeah, ID Forza franchise becomes big, and all of a sudden Disney owns that too. Why not? What the hell? So I think we're gonna wrap the things up for the evening. Oh no, I do wanna bring one more thing up. How cool would it, since everybody's doing combined universes?
Oh no.
And oh yeah, here I go. How about we have the Emmerich universe where we bring in Stargate? Tell me this did. Tell me I had visions of Stargate coming into my head going, they could totally work Stargate into the ID4 world. And how cool would that be?
No, seriously, this is my question. Do we get scenes with Spader and Goldblum? Because that would rock.
That would rock.
Two brainiacs taking on this entire race of alien maniacs?
Yes, hell, bring Will Smith back. Will Smith and Kurt Russell pulling the soldier angle with Spader and Goldblum. Hollywood, call me. Okay, Hollywood, call me. We've got box office gold here, folks.
I am in. I'm in.
I'm in. Sure, why not? We'll even work Zilla in there. Why not? We'll just throw all the Emmerich stuff together. Why not?
Oh yes, Iguana. I almost forgot about the giant iguana and that little raptor babies a few years after Jurassic Park.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Godzilla Park.
You can cut all this out, Mark.
No, Godzilla Park, yeah. But no, I was just thinking of an Emmerich United cinematic universe going on, because they are talking about rebooting Stargate, and he's going to be involved in that. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that because he is heavily involved in that. So that could be interesting. But that's for another time. Independence Day Resurgence. Folks, it's a dumb popcorn film. Don't get me wrong, I fully acknowledge it, but I found it entertaining, and it sounds like, Paul, you said you found it entertaining, maybe not as much as what you kind of was hoping, but it was still, I'd say, worth the price of admission, wouldn't you?
Definitely, especially to be able to see, the visuals. You shouldn't always go see movies just for the visuals, but this movie's visuals are fantastic. Go watch it for that.
If nothing else for that, and you get to see Bill Pullman for a while, and Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum.
And Brent Spiner.
And Brent Spiner. You get to see Brent Spiner back there. I mean, cripes, that right there is worth at least an early show. So we'll wrap it here for the evening. We're going to have everyone go down the line real quick here and just pimp their stuff, where you can find their stuff at and such. Cole, go ahead. You first, sir.
Thanks for having me tonight, Mark. It was so great to talk to you guys. Paul, good to hear from you again. You can find me at Shadows and Lovers Productions on Facebook. Also, Horror on Facebook. I do some digital art there. Also on Twitter, Cole James Meredith. Seek me out, but we have a new movie on the horizon which has gotten some good buzz, actually. The Last Great Horror Movie. We're very proud of that, and keep an eye out for it. We worked our asses off on it. Thanks again for having me. That's awesome.
Glad to have you, Cole. And Paul, where can we find you at, and what are you working on?
Right now I'm working on a really neat little project. It's called the Northeast Wisconsin Horror Film Festival, and you can find out more about that at www.newhorrorfest.com. And if you just want to find out more about myself, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and WordPress at Forsaken Film Reviews.
Awesome. Glad to have you back. And of course, your one-stop shop for all your Movie Man needs is specialmarkproductions.com. You got links there to my YouTube channel, Facebook page you can get to from there as well. I'm on the Twits at Movie Maniac 3D, or follow us here for the podcast specific at Spoiler Room PDCS. And we're on Twitter there as well. You can get updates just for the Spoiler Room podcast. Please rate and like us on iTunes if you listen to us there. We're on Stitcher. We're on Google Play as well. We are everywhere. We love to hear your feedback. And make sure you subscribe to that RSS feed if you want, if you don't want to do iTunes, so you can catch the latest episodes here of the Spoiler Room. Hope you enjoyed our conversation on Independence Day Resurgence. And we've got a great, speaking of sci-fi, we've got a great month lined up heading to our 100th episode. Before that, though, we've got a few in between, and we're going all sci-fi for July, baby. We've got some great films. I think they're ones that I enjoy, and I want to hope to get some interesting conversations with the crew on them, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. And until next time, remember, in the Spoiler Room, the conversation is fresh, though we do spoil the movies.